Okay, so one problem that we might be facing is, let's say we want to create a website. So we add our H1 here. This can be our logo, and then we have our UL with our lists. Maybe this is our contact. So this is our navigation. So let's say home here. Let's say contact, projects, and I don't know. Maybe we have a sign up or something. Sign up. Okay, and then let's say we have another section here that we want to write about ourselves. So we can add a H2, this is us. And then we might have a paragraph here as well, norm 20. And then we might want to add some images down below here. So image, and we might have multiple images like this. So what's the problem with this? The problem with this is that everything is kind of chaotic and everything just kind of flows here together. There are no clear, distinct sections between our header here or our navigation or our paragraph here or the image gallery that we have down here below. So we have a HTML element called div, which is mainly used as a wrapper to kind of organize everything together for you. And this is also going to help us tremendously in our CSS. So what you can do is you can wrap all of the necessary things that you want inside a div. So maybe this is going to be an image gallery. So rather than having them floating in space, you can wrap them inside a div like this. And now everything is wrapped inside this div. So maybe we can add a class to this and we can call it gallery. So now in our CSS, we can just grab this gallery and position it and modify it the way we want. But it's way easier to do it like this and everything is organized than just have everything floating out here on the screen. Now, one thing that we're gonna get into in just a bit is called the new HTML5 semantic elements, which are very important because the difference, the thing with these divs is that they're non-semantic, okay? They don't actually have a special meaning at all. As you can see, it even says it to us. Element has no special meaning. It just represents its children. It can be used with a class, lang, and title to group consecutive elements together. So it has no meaning. Just as we had span before, this is also called a non-semantic element. It doesn't actually tell us anything about this Fujiat here, okay? However, a semantic element, just to kind of give you a good example for you, is something like a form. This also acts as a wrapper to our input elements, like this. But this has semantic meaning to it rather than a div. A div doesn't say anything to us, but a form is a clear semantic element that has a clear purpose. And what we want to do is we want to replace these empty things with specific semantic elements that have a purpose. So even this thing, this H1 here should be like our header. So we could drop this in a div like this, and we can wrap actually everything here, the whole thing until here. So this can be maybe our class of header, and this UL thing can be our navigation, right? So let's do another, and here's a quick shortcut also to create a class very quickly with a div. You just add a dot and you give it a name, nav, and then hit tab, and that's automatically gonna generate you a div with the class of nav. So I'm gonna wrap everything in here together, and there we go. That's kind of the gist of it. But again, this is kind of problematic because it doesn't actually have any semantic meaning to it. So with HTML5 and the recent years, we got some new elements that perfectly describe what we have on the screen. So rather than wrapping everything in these empty divs that don't mean nothing, we have these semantic elements. So let me show you. Rather than naming this div, I'm gonna get rid of the header. I can just name it header. There we go. And as you can see, you also get a small description. It says the header represents introductory content for its nearest ancestors. Okay, so a header typically contains a group of introductory or navigation aids. So it doesn't actually describe any of your content that you're gonna have on the page later on. Maybe you have a section with some images, maybe you have a blog post and things of that sort. You don't want that in the header. It's just kind of a introductory thing that's going to help you with navigating and things of that sort. So we have our header here, and a good thing to have is our logo. So there we go. We have our logo, which is a H1, so it's very important. It's a big heading. And rather than naming this a class of nav, what we can do is replace this with nav as well. So this perfectly describes, as you can see, represents a section of the page that links to other pages or parts within the page. So it's specifically made for navigating. Okay? Perfect. So now we are using the correct semantic HTML elements. So let me quickly show you a part of the page like this one that we're eventually going to build out. So we have this part here, and maybe I want to group it together. So rather than making one big div here, we can create a HTML element called section. And a section is usually used just to group together some content, typically with a heading. All right, so it's just a section is a thematic grouping of some content. Okay, so what we can do is we can write section like this, and here maybe we can have a H2 that's gonna say, here is my image gallery, like this. Okay, so that would be a section, and in here we can have all of our images. But typically we used images like this, boom, 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 boom. And there is nothing wrong with this. There is absolutely nothing wrong with using images like this. But recently there has been a new element added that's called figure. And all a figure does, it helps add some visual explanation to an image. All right, because there was no proper way of semantically adding a caption to an image. But now you can do that. You can do a figure like this, and inside this figure, you can add your image. And in here, we can also add something called a fig. Let me not make a mistake here. Fig caption like this. All right, it's not working for some reason. Let's say fig, oh, there we go, fig caption, now it appears. So fig action elements represents a caption or a legend for the rest of the contents of the fig caption elements, parents, figure elements. Oh my goodness, that's very long. So we can add a fig caption like this, and we can describe the image. So just add a simple caption. Let's say nature picture by DevEd. All right, and this is going to be different from the alt tag because this actually describes what the image is. So maybe I have a picture with a mountain like that. Okay, so we can also use this figure to add captions, and it's going to be semantically good. Okay, so section, we use it to group in together a part or a section of our website, and also figure that helps us add some semantic to our images with captions. At the end of our website, we also have the footer that typically gives some more information about the website or maybe some social links, so we can use that as well at the bottom of the page. And rather than again making a simple div with a class of footer, we can just use a footer. So let's rename this to footer like this. And in here in a footer, typically you have the author of the document, copyright information, contact information, social links, and things of that sort. So maybe the website was created 2018, copyright, whatever, things of that sort. And maybe you have some social links in here. So maybe you can have a UL with an LIA. All right, so we add an anchor tag, and we have some a link to my twitter.com/whatever we have, and this says here Twitter. All right, so this is a footer. We're gonna add this later on to all of our websites as well, but just more information about social links again, and contains just information about the author or about the website. Okay, there's two more I want to cover, and I was quickly Google searching here, and I didn't find anything that looks remotely decent, but there's one called A-side. So let's go up here, and you write it exactly like this, A-side. And this typically, can I open this image? All right, This A side is this part of the website, okay, as you can see down here. And all it does is it acts kind of like a sidebar, okay? It has content that is typically used in a sidebar. And all you have to know is that this sidebar should have content that is related to the surrounding content. So this can act like maybe you have a book here or something, and then you have an A side with all the chapters that you can select. So you can click through the chapters. That can be a perfect A side. But we have an article, and that can look similar to a section. We might have a heading here as well, my little book. And we might have some paragraphs as well, and maybe some images too. So what's the difference between this and this? Well, a section is, well, imagine like we only have this section on our page, okay? So this section only. Well, this doesn't tell us too much. It doesn't really make any sense, right? But if you have multiple sections and you can see all of it, then it makes more sense, right? You need to have the general scope of the website. However, an article needs to make sense on its own. So you can imagine it as you can read this whole thing in here and you get the context. It makes perfect sense. You can imagine it as being like a blog post or an article, right? You can read an article. You don't need to know anything else about the website, and it's going to make perfect sense. Lastly, what I want to cover is the HTML element called main. And main is used only once in our document, and it covers basically your main content. So not navigation links, not anything else. So basically, for example, on this webpage, the main content would be from here all the way down here. All right, the header and the heading and the navigations and footer that we're gonna add eventually down here has nothing to do with the main content of our website. So here what I would do is I would have my header, okay, that's fine, and then we have our nav, which is fine, and these sections and articles and everything else, we can wrap it once in main because this is the main content of the website. So let's go all the way here and wrap everything up, okay? And actually I'm gonna take this article and cut it out here and add it to these sections. So maybe I have multiple articles like this. All right, perfect. So let's take a look at this again. We have our header with our logo, a navigation. We have our main, which holds the main content of our website. And then we can have a section that holds all the articles. We might have another section that has an image gallery of some sort, and we can add a class of gallery. Now, just to make it clear, that we might still need divs. Just because we have these HTML5 semantic elements doesn't mean that we are not gonna use divs, because in certain cases you might want to group specific things together in some way. So in this gallery we might have a title or a heading, so we can say these are my images, and I might want to group some things in specific ways. So maybe I want to group these two images like this, and maybe I have two more. So I want to group these in different ways than this. I want to maybe manipulate the styling and everything different from these. So what you could do is you can add two divs around these. So let me just make one called, let's say row 1, all right? And group this in row 2. Or maybe I want these to be styled differently. Maybe I want these to have a black background, so I'm gonna name these black. And maybe I wanna have this on a red background, so I'm gonna name these red. So I'm grouping these together just for styling purposes, not really for semantic purposes. So divs are still important and we're gonna use them a lot, but for these big main sections, you should use these HTML5 semantic elements that they provide us. So there we go, these are the HTML5 semantics, and don't worry if you don't get them straight from the start and you don't remember all of these. We're gonna practice when we're gonna build projects, and we're gonna reuse them, and it's gonna make more and more sense. But don't worry if you don't get them at the first try and you don't know where to place things, because even these days people are still debating what is semantically correct and where they should put what. So don't worry too much about it. But what I want to clarify is that we can also reuse these. So headers are actually, you can use it more times. So maybe in an article, you can wrap your introductory elements inside of a header. So maybe the title here can be wrapped inside of a header, and that's perfectly fine. And you can do that, header, and maybe we can also add a subtitle in here, maybe with a header tree. So we can say, this is a book about love, or something like that. And then you can have your text and the rest of your content. So you can still use headers just to give information about the title of your article in here. And also we saw that we can reuse articles as well. We can reuse sections as well. Those figures that we saw. Footer cannot, you only have one footer usually. And main can be only used once as well to represent the main content of your website. Okay, but we're gonna get more practice with this. Okay, I'm not gonna go too deep into this. And yeah, let's continue. Let's keep going, and soon the fun will begin.